Whispers from the Future Story of the Wing Makers. The Wing Makers. An amazing story of the discovery of a time capsule stored deep inside a canyon wall for over a millennium. The Wing Makers left behind 23 chambers of artifacts consisting of paintings, poetry, music, philosophy, and enigmatic technologies that the most powerful organization on Earth cannot decipher or activate. There were, however, two very puzzling questions. All but one of the artifacts could be dated to the 8th century AD. The exception, known as the compass artifact, appeared to be an unusual form of technology, and was found among more typical artifacts like pottery and simple tools. The compass was covered in strange hieroglyphic symbols, some of which were also found on the pottery. Secondly, the pictographs that were found in the area had inexplicably appeared, and they were strikingly different than any of the other native petroglyphs or rock art found in the southwest or the entire continent for that matter. Because of these two anomalies, the artifacts and the entire project quickly became the property of the U.S. government, or more specifically, the National Security Agency. It was decided that these artifacts might suggest a prehistorical, extraterrestrial presence on Earth, and that the NSA had the appropriate agenda and wherewithal to initiate a full-scale, scientific expedition to determine the nature and significance of the site. The site was completely searched by a secret department of the NSA in 1973, but it only resulted in a few additional findings, and none of them were designated as technologies or evidence of an extraterrestrial presence. Additional pictographic symbols were found, but decoding them was a difficult and frustrating process. Experts were called in to help, but it was impossible to reach a consensus as to what the pictographs meant. As quickly as the project had risen as a priority investigation, it fell into the archives of the NSA under the code name, Ancient Arrow. 21 years later, in 1994, a series of rock slides opened up a section of the Ancient Arrow site. The canyon was in a naturally obscure section of parkland held by the state of New Mexico. After its discovery in 1972, it had been officially sanctioned off-limits to hikers and campers and was to be left in its natural state. From time to time, scientists sponsored by the NSA would visit the site hoping to uncover new evidence, but were invariably disappointed. Shortly after the rock slide occurrence, a small team of operatives from the NSA visited Ancient Arrow Canyon to do some follow-up research. They discovered the rock slide had exposed an entrance to a hidden cavern that led deep within the canyon walls. At the back of this cavern, the research team discovered a well-hidden entrance into the interior of the canyon wall or rock structure of the Ancient Arrow site. There they found a system of tunnels and chambers that had been carved out from solid rock. There were a total of 23 chambers, all intricately connected to an interior corridor, and each chamber held a specific wall painting, series of pictographs, written hieroglyphs, and what seemed to be dormant, alien technologies. Once this entrance to the cavern was found, a report was immediately filed with the director responsible for the Ancient Arrow project. The project was then formally brought under the jurisdiction of the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, ACIO, which organized an interdisciplinary research team to assess the exact nature of the site and attempt to discover additional artifacts or evidence of an extraterrestrial visitation. The ACIO is a secret or unacknowledged department of the NSA. It is headquartered in Virginia, but also have personnel in Belgium, India, and Indonesia. They are largely unknown, even to senior directors within the NSA. The ACIO is the lowest profile organization within the entire intelligence community. Its agenda is to research, assimilate, and replicate any technologies or discoveries of extraterrestrial origin. Its personnel consist mainly of scientists who are completely anonymous, yet are paid salaries in excess of $400,000 per year because of their security clearance and IQ. This secret organization not only possesses enormous brain power, but it is also in possession of technologies that are far in advance of any other research facility on the planet. They are, in a word, privileged. The artifacts found at the ancient Arrow site were virtually incomprehensible to the research team. There were many mysteries. Why would an advanced culture leave their artifacts in such a precise and seemingly ordered manner? What was the message they were trying to leave behind? What were their technologies and why did they leave them behind? Did the creators of this site intermingle with the native tribes or remain an isolated culture? Who were they and why were they here in the 8th century? Were they planning to return? These were only some of the mysteries that challenged the research team. Throughout the 7 months of restoration, cataloging, and analysis, the Ancient Arrow project was a complete enigma. More of the energy went into the safe preservation of the artifacts, rather than attempting to solve the puzzle of their existence, though speculations were a topic of every conversation. Gradually, a hypothesis was structured by the research team that an extraterrestrial culture established an Earth colony in the 8th century and isolated itself within the ancient Arrow Canyon. They brought with them a very precise mission to leave behind a massive time capsule that would prove to be discovered in the late 20th century. While the exact nature of the time capsule was unclear to the research team, it seemed probable that it was a cultural exchange of some kind and had no invasive intent to Earth or its people. It took a team of researchers nearly 2 years after the restoration was completed to decipher a partial meaning of the chamber artifacts. The 23 separate chambers seemed to be linked together to form some specific message or purposeful mission. In the 23rd and final chamber, they recovered a small optical disc that was presumed to hold digital information that could be the key to deciphering the artifacts. Scientists eagerly analyzed the disc, but they could not figure out how to access its content. The ACIO's finest computer experts were called in to try and unlock the encoded disk, but to no avail. Several more months were spent trying every conceivable method to access the contents of the disk, but nothing worked. The Ancient Arrow project, for the first time in nearly a year, had hit a dead end and funding for the project was rapidly weaned by the ACIO. After 2 more months of unsuccessful efforts, it was decided that the technology to access the disk was simply not available. The optical disk and all of the artifacts and findings would be carefully placed in secure storage until the technologies were available to unlock the disk and harvest its content. It was presumed that the disk held star charts, translation indexes, glossaries, and all the answers to the various mysteries of its creators and, perhaps more importantly, their intentions for Earth. While the optical disc was considered to be the key to unlocking the meaning of the time capsule, the ACIO had little choice, but to place the project into storage and await the arrival of technologies that would permit them to unlock the disc. However, there were 2 scientists from the research team who theorized that the disc could be unlocked by understanding the meaning of the wall paintings in each of the 23 chambers. In their minds it was not a complex, technological solution, but rather a language or translation solution that would unlock the disc. After much persuasion, the ACIO agreed to allow the 2 researchers to assemble a replica of the time capsule's contents. The replica time capsule consisted of detailed drawings and photographs of all the artifacts from each of the 23 chambers, including detailed, high-resolution photographs of the wall paintings. The 2 scientists would be allowed to continue their research on their own time provided they maintained utmost secrecy and reported all of their findings directly to the ACIO division head and project director. The optical disc was securely stored away in a vault within the ACIO. The project was officially put on indefinite hold, and all personnel associated with the project were reassigned, with promotions, to different projects. The Ancient Arrow project was not to be spoken of again until which time the technologies or some other means provided a way to unlock the optical disc and access its contents. The scientists spent nearly 5 months in partnership, trying unsuccessfully to decode the Ancient Arrow artifacts and establish the means to unlock the optical disc. During this time, the ACIO regularly experimented with new technologies or methods, and they too, were unsuccessful in unlocking the content of the optical disc. One day, late in the summer of 1996, one of the scientists, a linguistics expert, had an insight into how to unlock the optical disc by reducing the symbols of the wall paintings to their closest facsimile found in an ancient Sumerian text. While the Sumerian language is extinct, it was sufficiently comprehensible to this scientist that he was able to decode the symbols of the paintings, and, placing the 23 words in the same order as the ancient arrow chambers, he was able to finally unlock the optical disc. The connection between the Sumerian language and the time capsule was the breakthrough the ACIO team had been waiting for. A simple set of 23 words elicited over 8,000 pages of data from the optical disc. Unfortunately, the data was incomprehensible because there was no character set in the computer that could emulate the hieroglyphics and unusual symbols of the language. Thus, a translation index needed to be developed, which took an additional 6 months. Finally, once a translation index was programmed into the computer, the data, while it could be printed out or viewed on the monitor in its hieroglyphic form, still required translation to English. And this translation process was extremely tedious and could not be facilitated through computers, owing to the subtlety of the language and its intricate connection to the wall paintings and pictographic representations elsewhere within the ancient arrow site. As partial translations began to be developed, it was determined that even within the optical disc there was a segmentation of the data into 23 units. Each unit appeared to correspond to a specific chamber. As the first 2 chambers began to be translated, it was further shown that each unit contained philosophical and scientific papers, poetry, music, and an introduction to the culture and identity of its creators. The creators of the time capsule referred to themselves as wing makers. They represented a future version of humanity who lived some 750 years in our future. They claimed to be culture bearers, or ones that bring the seeds of art, science, and philosophy to humanity. They had left behind a total of 7 time capsules in various parts of the world to be discovered according to a well-orchestrated plan. Their apparent goal was to help the next several generations of humans develop a global culture, a unified system of philosophy, science, and art. In early 1997, the ACIO scientist who had originally discovered the access code for the optical disc became strangely sympathetic with the Wingmaker's mission. He was convinced that the ACIO would never share the discovery with the public, and he was certain that it was too significant to withhold. He also claimed that he was in communication with the Wingmakers and that they were watching the ACIO's progress and would, at the appropriate time, make the time capsule and its contents available to the public. This assertion troubled the ACIO and particularly the Ancient Arrow project director, who eventually recommended a leave of absence for the scientist and was summarily dispatched from the project. The scientist was afraid that his memories would be tampered with or destroyed altogether, and so he defected from the ACIO, quite literally the first to ever do so. Soon after his defection, the scientist disappeared. However, before his disappearance, some of his materials regarding the Wingmakers and their time capsule were given to a journalist that he had selected at random. The author of this document is that journalist. I am in possession of photographs, music, poetry, artwork, translation indexes, copies of secret documents, and a variety of translated philosophical texts that all stem from the Ancient Arrow project. I've taken every precaution to remain anonymous so I can't be traced. I'm convinced that these materials are released against the wishes of a secret organization that probably has powers that even our government is unaware of. Before the ACIO scientist had contacted me, whom I will hereafter refer to as Dr. Anderson, I felt little or no interest in matters related to time travel, extraterrestrials, secret organizations, or anything else similar to these issues. When I initially heard the story it seemed preposterous, but I kept my journalistic objectivity, and met with Dr. Anderson and reluctantly concluded that it would be unlikely for an individual to fabricate this story with such detail and supporting evidence, and then desire to remain anonymous. Dr. Anderson had brought files of photographs and drawings of odd-looking technologies that had strange symbols engraved on their outer casings. Research reports referencing the translation tables, cipher protocols, star charts, and dozens of memos from the ACIO department heads discussing the Ancient Arrow project. Everything, including about 400 pages of philosophical text, had an authenticity to it that I was unable to reproach or ignore. In fairness to those who will suggest I should investigate further in order to get independent corroboration before I present these materials, let me just say that I'm unable to corroborate his story because of the very nature of the ACIO. However, for whatever reason, I trust Dr. Anderson, who gave me these materials. He asked nothing from me. He desired no money or recognition. His only request was that I decide how best to bring these materials to the public. He counseled me not to investigate the ACIO because he was convinced the NSA would use misinformation tactics that would simply waste my time and make the goal of releasing these materials difficult, if not impossible. I've not contacted any other office of the government because Dr. Anderson told me that this would be traced by the ACIO, who had high-level operatives in both the NSA and CIA, and, at best, would only invite misinformation tactics from one or both. I'm in possession of certain documents that I'll withhold from the Wingmakers website, but if anything were to happen to me, I've arranged to have these documents shared with major media companies whom I know. These are my only safeguards in presenting these materials. My only interest is in the release of these materials to the public, and then they can decide what to do about them. They may desire to pressure their politicians or take other action, it's their choice. I'm convinced that this story is too important to be held in the hands of an elite organization whose only interest is to re-engineer the technologies found in the ancient Arrow site and apply them for their own agenda, no matter how noble that agenda may be. Let me be clear, these documents provide incontrovertible evidence of this secret organization known as the ACIO, and its elite directors are named and their real identities exposed. I've spent the last several months agonizing about how these materials should be presented, and it seemed most appropriate to place them on the internet to enable a global audience to access them. I have a close friend who created this website whom I trust completely. Other than that, no one knows what I have done here, including my website host. You might ask why I've chosen to reserve full-scale media disclosure of the materials given to me by Dr. Anderson. I can only tell you that I don't want to create a circus atmosphere surrounding this discovery. It may ultimately end up in the mass media, but for now, my instincts are to keep a low profile for both these materials and myself. In doing so, I hope to preserve some sense of the dignity of these artifacts and let it grow from there. I've never been involved in any story approaching this magnitude of importance, and I'm certain that if you spend some time on this website and suspend your disbelief, even for a few minutes, you will see how important a discovery this time capsule is. The best way you can help is to spread the word about this discovery, and open the eyes of your political representatives. If you have websites of your own, please link to the Wingmakers site. Dr. Anderson had warned me that the ACIO has an advanced version of a technology based on what he called remote viewing. As I understand it, remote viewing is the ability to ascertain the whereabouts of people through some sort of psychic insight by someone trained in this technology. I know this sounds far-fetched, but Dr. Anderson was insistent that they had this capability and that it was one of their most feared technologies by those within the ACIO. In effect, it was known to keep their personnel loyal. Unfortunately, this will force me to stay underground and remain very mobile over the next several months. Believe me, I know that this whole story may seem impossible, but I can only tell you that I've seen detailed drawings and photographs of the artifacts taken from the ancient Arrow site, and these are most assuredly, to my eyes, not of this time or world. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. Either the Wingmakers are real, or someone has gone to a lot of trouble to convince me otherwise, and again, I'm a simple journalist without any axe to grind relative to secret government operations, ETS, time travel, or alien artifacts. I'm not here to convert anyone. There is nothing to convert to. I simply want to disclose this material and let each individual absorb it as they choose. I will add additional documents and artifacts from the ancient Arrow site when I feel it is safe to do so, but for now, there's enough material on this site to introduce anyone to the culture of the Wingmakers. I hope you take the time to immerse yourself in these materials. If you do, you may be surprised at the result. By Anne. Written October 23, 1998. Stay paranoid, my friends.